What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining me on these analysis. We're going to be checking out MSTR and Bitcoin today. So we're currently sitting at 328.4. We opened up the day pretty solid and then absolutely fell off. We were sitting at around 359 and then we opened slightly down, still at 358, nothing too major. And then an absolute red engulfing candle, down almost 9% on the day. You can see the 2 4-hour candles were pretty massive, and if you see on the 1 hour, pretty much as soon as we opened, it almost just was a free fall from the open. The first 2 hours were pretty much the worst, and then kind of sideways chopping and finished slightly lower at 328. Now we are still inside of this range, so that's still a good sign at least, but it starts to make you wonder if this inverse head and shoulders that we've been speaking about is potentially going to play out, as we already have our left shoulder potential head. And now if we were to kind of just sideways chop, that would create that right shoulder. And potentially, if Bitcoin were to see some upside and start to run up a little bit, then this could play out and we could probably see some upside for MSTR. That's the only thing with MSTR when you have that third-party risk and you open yourself up to other things that can manipulate the price opposed to just Bitcoin itself. Like I said, though, we are still above this support level, so expect some kind of chop here. Now, if we were to lose this structure, then of course we're back into the idea of us coming down here for a retest and then potentially to the next level. But right now we're looking for some kind of chop and then hopefully a move back to the top. But overall, it's going to be some kind of chop before making a decision to the downside underneath this structure or above that structure there. We came pretty close to breaking above it, and then we just absolutely fell off. I was not expecting a major sell-off like that. That was pretty significant. It was a pretty red day for the MSTR divided by IBIT, which we were already talking about. And the reason we were talking about it, we'll go over in a minute. It was just perfectly lined up with this level of resistance on MSTR divided by IBIT, and it wasn't showing any signs of strength on MSTR divided by IBIT. So we were kind of coming to the conclusion that MSTR would underperform Bitcoin, and it looks like that is continuing because of that momentum, and it's just kind of just been that way for some time now. But anyways, we're going to go over what we've already been talking about. We were looking pretty solid. We were expecting some kind of retest of the 50, which is this yellow and red line, or pink, whatever you want to call that. We were expecting a retest, and we got a retest. But we fell way deeper than anticipated. I thought it was going to be a little bit more shallow and then maybe a bounce. I was not expecting a negative 9% day. And it kind of was rejected off of the 20-week, which we were speaking of. We were saying that's going to be a lot of resistance. We said that in the last video. A lot of resistance with this key structure and confluence together to push price down. Now, like I said, I wasn't expecting it to push down like that. And on the daily, we were looking incredibly bullish up until this point. Everything was looking pretty solid. We broke above our 20. We were above the 200 and the 50, using it somewhat as a level, as a floor. And then we just lost all three in one day. We lost the 50, the 200, and the 20 in one day. So we are back in essentially this area right here, similar to where we were. We're in the same state that we were over here, or if we're just falling back underneath the 20. So we definitely didn't want to see that, and now we know how this always turns out. You break underneath the 20, now the next time we go up to the 20, it's going to be acting as a ceiling, and now we're looking at additional pressure to the downside, even though we have this major level of support. But if we lose this, that could start to really add up and start pushing price down even harder. Now, one thing we were talking about in the last video too was the Bollinger Bands. We were pushing up to the blue band, found a little bit of rejection off of that, mostly on the daily. we were hugging it pretty well, and then we just fell straight off a cliff after closing almost outside of it, and then we fell right back to the blue band. I was not expecting a fall off that quick, but of course MSTR is volatile, and volatility goes both ways, to the upside and to the downside. And when we look at the short-term rally, I guess, indicator, it's the 8-week EMA, 8-day EMA that we like to look at. We're back underneath it. It was looking pretty solid, and now we're looking not so good. It was looking like we were getting ready for a nice little rally to start, begin, maybe come back for a retest, and now we're back underneath, and now we're essentially in one of these positions here, or something similar to here. That's what it kind of feels like, or even something over here. Getting an aggressive move back underneath the 8-day EMA. Hopefully we get a green engulfing candle to wipe this out, but if the momentum continues, then it could play out like we already saw previously. Now Bitcoin, on the other hand, I don't really think it's looking too bad. We were already talking about this previously because we spoke about the first close outside of this upward sloping trend line. We got that twice before, but the second one comes back for a retest, ends up closing underneath. Same thing happens here. We close above it. Second one comes back for a retest, ends up closing underneath it. So of course, we closed last week above this level here. We're expecting a retest, which we got. We retested this upward sloping trend line, and practically this level of support here. Remember, these zones aren't exact, so the zone could technically be there. I'm just going to leave it how I had it. So we were, of course, expecting a retest, and we got that. We'll see if this holds and starts to push up higher. If we wick fill this, well, we technically already did, but if we can close at this wick or higher, I think that's really going to start to open up the floodgates for another move higher. So that's pretty much what we're looking for. At the bare minimum, we want to close above this area right here. We want to close above that. We want to get that second close to kind of, almost confirm that we're ready to start moving and using this upward sloping trend line as a floor instead of it being a ceiling. So we're still in the phase where it is a floor at the moment, but we know that that can flip quickly, as we saw in a matter of 2 weeks each time. So I think overall Bitcoin is looking pretty solid though. We'll see if the momentum can carry us and start to shift back to the upside. But I think it's looking pretty solid. Nothing really has changed, especially when you look at the higher time frames. Now we have come back underneath the 20 on the 4-hour, and we almost came back for a retest off of the 50 on the 4-hour. So maybe we find support off of that and continue the momentum. And on the 1-hour, we have almost made a touch of the 200 on the 1-hour and this key level of support. So those could be acting as a trampoline to continue pushing price higher. Now we have to be aware that on the daily, it's kind of saying that we could see a little bit of bearishness, but it's only one candle after a major move. I mean, look at this. We ran up from the bottom. We ran up 16%. So seeing a 4% drawdown is very normal. Nice little cool off to continue higher, especially when you pull a fib. It's really like nothing even happened. We're just underneath the 236, which is our most bullish level that we can see on this fib sequence. I don't think anything has changed. I think we're just getting a retest. Now, the only, I guess, concern that you could say is that this one close on the daily was back underneath this upward sloping trend line, which of course means now that we close here that we could be retesting for resistance and then pushing back down to lower levels. But like I said, on the bullish side, when you pull a fib, we're slightly underneath the 236. If we reclaim the 236 tomorrow or on this daily close that's coming up in 21 hours, if we close back above that 236, maybe that starts to ignite that next leg higher. And like I said, this is just a cool off period to continue higher. MSTR divided by IBIT, this is what we were talking about as well. where we've already seen this downward pressure for some time now. I guess depending on how you want to draw it to it, I guess it could be something like that, or you could take it from this and maybe it never even broke out to begin with. So it depends on how you draw it. So if you take it like that, we never broke out to begin with. If we leave it the other way, then we broke out, pretty much got a fake out, came for a retest, and now we close back inside of it, and now we're continuing the momentum down further. So this is not what you want to see, especially getting a close equal to this low. We haven't seen this price since October 2024, so a year ago. So practically a 52-week low. It is a 52-week low on the MSTR divided by IBIT. So that is a terrible sign, and it looks like momentum is carrying on to the downside, unfortunately, which, like I said before, it's signaling that MSTR could continue to underperform IBIT. And if we lose this structure, we could have a clean move all the way down to 383. Let's see how it looks on the weekly. Definitely on the weekly, if we close underneath here, I think we're going to see potentially, I would say we'll probably stop at 408. We'll get some kind of like slowdown, but ultimately probably touching, the mid threes or something like that, maybe high threes, 3.7, 3.8. But that's severe underperformance of Bitcoin. And, it doesn't even matter what Bitcoin does. If Bitcoin goes down 2% and MSTR goes down 9%, this thing's going to drop even more. If Bitcoin goes up 10% and MSTR only goes up 8%, this is going to go down even more. So we'll just keep watching it. We'll see if we can even make it back to the trend line. Right now, it doesn't look like it. It looks like it's just ready to continue bleeding at the moment. And when you look at the daily SMAs, the 20-day has been holding this trend intact pretty much the entire time, and it continues to do so. Fell underneath it and absolutely just fell off a cliff. And when we pull fib off the most recent leg, we didn't even make it to the 382 off of this leg. We made it just past the 236, which is showing very strong momentum to the downside, and it continued down further. So now we take it down to this low here, and we only made it to the 236 here. So if you pull it to the side, we made it to the 236, slightly above it, and we fell right off. So this is going to show again that there's enough power to the bearish side to continue that momentum to the downside. So right now the bulls are really taking over, or the bears are taking over in terms of MSTR divided by IBIT. So it looks like I said prior, MSTR will more than likely continue to underperform. I know nobody wants to hear it, but I'm just telling you what I see and giving you my opinion. I could be completely wrong, so don't make any trading decisions based off of this. This is just my opinion and how I see the market. So we talked about this yesterday as well on tether dominance. I'm going to keep talking about tether dominance because it's a great way to kind of navigate Bitcoin, in my opinion. So we have this upward sloping trend line, right? We were riding it pretty well. We closed underneath it, which is very bullish. And then, of course, just like anything else, we had an idea that we'd come back for a retest at some point, and it came back the next day, which is a good sign. We retested off of it. We're still in the middle of that retest. We have 4 days and 22 hours, so a lot can happen. The bearish scenario means Bitcoin closes back inside of this trend line, and then we start to play inside of this free space here, which we don't want to see, because now that's actually going to start to form an ascending triangle, which is very bullish, and that would mean downside for Bitcoin. Because remember, this is risk on to risk off and risk off to risk on. As tether dominance goes up, Bitcoin goes down. What we want to see is what we spoke about in the last video, which is a close underneath this structure, which we got, a retest, which we just got. Remember, these things take time to play out, so it doesn't happen overnight. After the retest, we want that push down further. We want to get a close underneath this wick at 418 or lower, and then ideally underneath this structure to continue the move lower. And once we do that, then we can start talking about making our final push potentially underneath this wick to this blue line or to this downward sloping trend line. On the dollar has been pushing up slightly. We were speaking about this where we're saying we were short-term bearish, but long-term bullish, because of the structure. It's been established from '08, multiple touches. It's held up pretty well, and I expected it to do the same here, and we kind of got that. If the dollar continues to rally and starts to pump, then that's going to put weakness on risk on assets like Bitcoin, any kind of stocks, and so on. So be aware of that. And if we want the big move that everybody's waiting for, we need the fall off, like we've already spoken about. But that's going to show some kind of capital rotation to the risk on, or the heavier risk on assets outside of Bitcoin, like ETH, Solana, and so on. As that shows, that's going to, just because this is dropping and other altcoins are outperforming Bitcoin, doesn't mean that Bitcoin's not going to be going up. But that's going to bring the FOMO that you need in the market to get your Bitcoin cycle top. It doesn't have to play out, but if we look at 17 and 21, then that is what we're anticipating. But like I said, every cycle is different. They might be similar, but they don't have to play out the exact same way. So keep an eye out for this. And our leading indicator for Bitcoin dominance is ETH divided by Bitcoin. If we can see a breakout of this downward sloping trend line and a move like this where we break above, use this as support and continue on higher, then that's going to be a leading indicator for Bitcoin dominance to drop, because that's going to show a severe outperformance of ETH over Bitcoin, and then that's going to trickle down into the other altcoins and get that rally potentially going. That's pretty much all I have for you guys. Make sure you drop a like, subscribe, drop a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next one.